Today I want to show you how to prepare curved cabinet scrapers like this gooseneck or this convex or this concave using a technique that I guarantee you have never seen before, but that yields the very quickest and best results that I have ever seen. So before I do that, I want to show you what a well-tuned curved cabinet scraper can do. So the principles of preparing a curved scraper are no different than preparing a rectangular scraper. You have to get a smooth, straight edge that is 90 degrees to the face. Then you have to polish the face on both sides, and then you have to turn a burr. This is pretty straightforward on a rectangular scraper, but it presents significant challenges when you're dealing with curves, because you have to find a way to remove a fair amount of material, especially if it's a new scraper, a fair amount of material from this curve in a consistent manner. Then you have to get it polished, then you have to polish the faces, and then you have to turn a burr. All of those are extremely challenging when you're doing curved scrapers. And so the common method is to take a file and to file the edge, and then to hone the edge with, say, diamond hones, and then to put this on a waterstone and then polish the edge. My experience is that that is painfully slow. I have a technique that was suggested to me by Robert Porter, and that is to use the drill press and to use these very inexpensive drum sanders. And I found that it really works well. So the first thing I do is I get these very inexpensive drum sanders. I have to use new ones because if they're old, sometimes they're not flat because they've been compressed. So I have to buy new ones so that this paper will adhere the best. And then I toss this drum out. And then I attach Cubitron PSA sandpaper to them, and that stuff cuts so fast and leaves such a nice finish and lasts a long time. So let me show you how I prepare one of those. The first thing I do is I just take a disc, this is a 5-inch disc of PSA Cubitron, and I just cut it down the middle, and then I cut a strip that's a little wider than the drum here like that, and then I square off the ends, and then I just wrap this around my drum. And I make the paper with the 5-inch disc is just long enough to overhang just a little bit, which is exactly what you want. I cut one at 180 and I cut one at 1000. The 180 removes a fair amount of material to deal with new scrapers. Remember that new scrapers are punched, so one side will have a slight rounding and the other side will have a burr. And so you have to, when you do the initial setup of a curved scraper, you have to remove a fair amount of material. And this 180 grit does the trick. So let me run over to the drill press and I'll show you how that works in action. All right, here's the setup at the drill press. I got the 180 grit drum sander chucked up in my chuck, and then I have this little board here. It's about 6 inches by 8 inches. It's 1.5 inches thick, and I have a hole drilled in it that's slightly bigger than my drum. What this allows me to do is it allows me to bury my drum below the surface, and then it gives me a nice platform that I can rest my scraper on to prepare the edge, and so it gives me a nice 90-degree edge. Another nice thing about this drum is it's hard enough where it gives me a nice square edge, and it's soft enough so that it doesn't leave any ripples when I'm doing this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grind this down with 180, and then I'm going to polish it with 1000 grit, and I'm going to time myself to see how long this thing takes. So here we go. So I'm just okay. So I switched it to 1000 grit, and I went ahead and polished the edge. Another nice thing about this little jig is that when my paper starts to cut a little bit slower, I can just lower the drum a little lower into the hole, and it will expose sharp abrasive. So if you look at the timer, it took me about 2 minutes to get this scraper prepared. And I don't know if you can see that, but that edge is polished and it is ready to go. And one way that I know that my scraper is ready to move on to the next level is that I need it to be a nice square, or a nice edge needs to be 90 degrees to the face. And when I rub it against my thumbnail, it should catch. Right there, I can feel it catching. I flip it over and I can feel it catching. So I know that this scraper is now ready for me to go and to deal with the face. So now we need to polish the faces of the scraper. Remember, we only need to polish the face that's right adjacent to the edge. So you don't need to polish the whole thing. So I've taken a magic marker and drawn a line around here just to kind of give me some training wheels. So I know when I've polished it up to the edge, and then I can move on. I like to use a piece of plate glass with a piece of 40 micron lapping film on it. This gives me the very quickest results. And then I have this little handle here. It's got little magnets on it. It grabs my scraper and allows me to move forward and back, and then I can put finger pressure right where I need it. So let me show you how fast this is. So I'm going to go along here, and I'm just going to go around the edge here. The handle gives me something to grab on. It's nice, it really is nice. Then I can use the whole piece of paper. Let's see how we're doing. I got all the way up to the edge here. I need a little bit there. I need to come here. And then I need to get the other end here. So this is very fast. Just takes a couple seconds. And then you have a nice polished face that comes right up to the edge. Because remember, sharpness is the intersection of two polished edges. And that's what we're doing with this cabinet scraper. Okay, so that's half that scraper. I'll go ahead and do the other half, and then I'll be back. Okay, I got the scraper polished all the way up to the face. You can see there's no magic marker left. So I have a nice polished edge on the face. I have a nice polished edge on the edge. And this should actually take shavings before I even put a burr on it. So let me show you how this thing is. I'm going to go ahead, and you can see that it actually makes shavings before we've even turned a burr, which tells me that this thing is ready to go. It's ready for a burr. So I can go on any part of the scraper on both sides and make shavings. So now let me show you how I turn the burr. Okay, I've got my scraper chucked up in my vise, and it's sticking out pretty far, which you would never be able to turn a burr on a scraper with a traditional burnisher with the scraper this far out of the vise. And I'm going to use the AccuBurr. I've got a little drop of oil on it. The AccuBurr has 3 grooves. I'm going to use the most aggressive groove because that's the one that's going to stay on this scraper as I go around the curves. So I'm going to start out, and I'm just going to go around this thing here like this. Just going to go around it. Got to keep it on there. I'm going to go just until I can feel a burr. I'm not quite there yet. I'm going to go here. See, I can hear that burr. I can hear the burr. So I know I've got it. So now I can move on to the next section here. I go 3, maybe 4 passes. I can hear a burr. I can just feel it with my fingernail. That's all you need. You don't need a big, huge burr. Actually, a small burr actually cuts better than a big one, in my experience. So I'm going to go around the curve here. Okay, I've got my burr all the way around. Okay, let's see how this thing cuts. So let me just see how it cuts on a piece of flat stock. I'm just going to go around it and look at the shavings. I can get a shaving from any part of this scraper, and that tells me that the whole thing is sharp. And I can slip it around and I can get shavings. Now this is just on a piece of flat stock. Let's see what happens if I use a piece of molding, like this cove molding that I made on the table saw. So now I can get full shavings all the way down. So this scraper is well prepared. Now let's go on, and I'm going to show you how to sharpen these kinds of scrapers with a little convex and concave bumps on them. Okay, now we're moving on to how to prepare these scrapers that have these little concave areas. If they're larger, like this, you could actually use your drum sander. It would be easy. But when you get down to smaller radii, like this one here, this is a 1/4 inch, there's no drum that small, so you have to use a different approach. So what I do in those situations is I just take a dowel the size of the radii, and I wrap it with the Cubitron. So on this side here, I've wrapped it with 180 grit. So scrap left from setting up the drill press, drum, sander, and then here's 1000 grit. And what I do is I just take my dowel and I just move it around the inside of that curve until I get down to fresh steel. I make sure to keep my dowel 90 degree to the scraper. Then I'll move on to 1000 grit. And this only takes a couple seconds to do this. So now I can look down on there and I can see I got a nice shiny surface. So now I can turn the burr. I'm going to use my cabinet scraper like I did on the other curve scraper. I'm going to use the most aggressive groove here. I'm just going to drop it in there, and I'm just going to bring it down and bring it up. Now just remember, there's no burnisher that is going to turn a burr on this small curve except for the AccuBurr. I'm going to go until I can feel a burr. So now let's move on to these convex scrapers, the one with the little bumps on them. They come with different size bumps. These are really good for cleaning up juice grooves or moldings or little coves. There's nothing better than cleaning up a burn mark from a router than a cabinet scraper. So these are really helpful to have around. The little bumps are challenging. So what I do is I make a sanding file. I put 180 on one side and I put 1,000 on the other. And then I just go along this, and I will just, keeping it 90 degrees to the scraper, I will just work on that edge until I get down to fresh steel. Just takes a few seconds. 180, and then I'll flip to 1,000. And then I do that just for a couple seconds. And I'll take it off and I'll see if it catches my thumbnail. And see, there it is, it's catching. I can feel it catching. It doesn't have to catch much, but it should scrape it. So there you go. So now all I have to do is turn a burr. And once again, there's no burnisher on the planet that's going to turn a burr on that little bump except for this AccuBurr. So I just go around the top just a few times until, see, you can hear that? Do you hear that? You can hear the burr. So I can hear the burr, so that is well prepared. Now I'm going to show you how these things work. So let's see how these scrapers work. So in this board here, I got a little flute cut. I don't know if you can see it, but there's some nice burns in there. Those would be an absolute nightmare to remove with sandpaper. And if you did get them out, you would probably round over that crisp edge. But the scraper will make short work of it. So let's see how it does. Got to find the right size. There we go. I'm going to do that. A couple passes. And that burn mark is gone. So you can see it. The burn mark now is no longer there. So these work great for doing flutes, for doing juice grooves. They're fantastic for doing juice grooves. So that's a great scraper to have on hand and to learn to sharpen. Now, a little concave scraper here. I use it sometimes. One of my more frequent uses is, for the small size anyway, is to resize dowels, because these dowels usually come in large. They don't fit in my holes. So I take this little concave section and I just run it across there and look, and I get a nice little shaving. And then I can resize dowels very quickly to fit in holes. So there you have it. This would also work for all kinds of molding. So there you have it. Sharpening curved scrapers like this gooseneck, this concave, or this convex, using the cabinet scraper prep kit here with the lapping film on the glass. And also it comes with hardware for you to make this little magnetic handle so you can hold on to the scraper while you're polishing the face. Also using this great Cubitron 2 PSA sandpaper, works fantastic for in the drill press sanding drums, and also the AccuBurr. This thing is amazing for doing curved scrapers. There's no other burnisher on the market that's going to allow you to address curved scrapers as efficiently and to get as quality of a burr as you can with the AccuBurr. So I'll leave links in the description below for buying the cabinet scraper prep kit, for buying the disc, for buying the AccuBurr, and for buying all these different kind of shaped scrapers, from the gooseneck to the concave and convex, and also to these little baby ones here, little cute baby ones here. So happy scraping.